Welcome to Sleep Theater Radio, where we bring you immersive tales accompanied by soft rain and ambient thunder. Tonight, we journey into the neon shadows of Lunaris, a city of circuits, ghosts, and broken gods. Here, the rain never ends, and every heartbeat echoes through the network. Our story follows Kael Rynn, a former racer haunted by the death of his brother and by the digital specters that refuse to stay dead. When the Gravemark system, a neural implant once meant to preserve life, begins to rewrite reality itself, Kael must confront not just the truth behind the machine, but what he's become inside it. This is Gravemark, a cyberpunk odyssey of memory, identity, and the ghosts we leave behind. If you enjoy stories of darkness, rain, and revelation, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss another descent into the static. Now, settle in, let the rain fall, and listen as the city remembers. The rain never stopped in Lunaris. It fell like static shimmering against the endless glow of hollow ads and traffic streams that threaded the city's vertical miles. Every droplet carried the taste of metal, recycled condensation from reactor towers high above, heavy with oil and ozone. Down below, in the underbelly where engines outnumbered trees, it gathered in rivulets that ran black with exhaust and memory. Kael Rynn sat in the pit bay of Circuit 12, a forgotten sector on the edge of the city grid. The air smelled of burnt polymer and synthetic fuel, the kind of scent that made your lungs hum. Before him, his brother's anti-grav racer rested in silence, sleek, obsidian black with streaks of silver. The name Ash Line was stenciled on the hull in fading white paint, half scorched from the last run. He remembered painting that name years ago, before everything went to hell. "Telemetry reads clean," said a voice behind him. Ress, the pit technician, his visor lit with shifting data streams. Stabilizers holding. Gravemark sync is green. Kael nodded without looking up. "He's still running it too hot. That's his style. You used to do the same." "Yeah," Kael muttered, "and it nearly killed me." He ran a hand along the racer's hull. The metal was warm, alive almost, vibrating faintly with the hum of the Gravemark system deep inside. Every pilot was linked to their machine through that neural signature, thought to motion, heartbeat to acceleration. For the best racers, the Gravemark became a second soul. For the unlucky ones, a coffin. A siren echoed overhead. The night's final race was about to begin. Through the pit bay glass, Kael saw the Coliseum track suspended above the sprawl, a ring of light and thunder coiling through the sky. Thousands gathered in hollow bleachers, their cheers transmitted through distortion. The sound was pure electricity. Jace Rynn stepped into view on the upper deck, adjusting the collar of his flameproof suit. Younger, sharper, but carrying the same haunted eyes. He spotted Kael below and raised a hand. Kael hesitated, then returned the gesture. It was the first time they'd seen each other in 2 years. The launch sirens blared. 12 racers lined the platform, chrome daggers beneath the storm. The track ahead shimmered, a twisting serpent of plasma glass threading through skyscraper canyons, the kind of race that made legends or corpses. Final heat of the lunar circuit. 12 contenders, one line, no breaks, the announcer boomed. "Let's see who bleeds for the crown." Jace's visor sealed with a hiss. Kael stood in the shadows, watching. The Gravemark tether gleamed at the base of his brother's skull, an obsidian chip fused with living nerves. Every heartbeat would now sync to the machine. If the racer crashed, the mark would pull their consciousness into the ship's black box, storing their final imprint for the crowd to replay. Kael wanted to look away, but he didn't. He couldn't. 3, 2, the world fell silent. 1. Then the track erupted. The ships launched in a blinding surge of light and velocity, carving through the storm like comets. Their trails painted the night in violent color. Engines howled, bending gravity itself. Kael's pulse synced with it, every turn, every near miss hitting like memory. He'd raced these lines once, before the crash, before the scars. He could still feel the way the machine had whispered through his veins. Now, he could only watch. Jace took the lead in the second lap, maneuvers impossibly sharp. His Gravemark flashed red, beyond safe limits. The ash line screamed through the air, slicing past hollow gates at speeds that blurred the city into neon and rain. Too fast, Ress muttered. He's burning his stabilizers. Kael didn't answer. Halfway through the third lap, something flickered. A pulse of interference rippled across the feed, static laced with a shriek. The crowd's cheers faltered. Kael frowned at the telemetry screens. One by one, vitals spiked red. Ress, what's happening? EMP spike from the east tower, Ress said. It's not supposed to be in range. What the hell is? The words died. Kael's screen went white. For a single endless second, all 12 racers froze midair, locked in a feedback loop. Then came the explosion. The ash line was the first to go, its hull tearing open in a blossom of fire. The blast cascaded down the track, consuming 3 other ships in burning plasma. Debris rained through the city like meteors. Kael slammed a hand against the glass. Jace! No response. Comms dead. The Gravemark frequencies. Flatline. He turned toward Ress, who stared at the monitors in horror. All telemetry lost. No data. It's like they never existed. Kael's vision blurred with rain and heat. And he didn't remember running, only the pounding of boots on metal as he reached the crash site. Smoke and embers painted the air red. The remains of the ash line were scattered like bones. The Gravemark module still flickered, weakly, half buried in slag. Kael knelt beside it, hands trembling. The small obsidian ship pulsed once, then again, like a heartbeat refusing to die. He could hear faint static through the rain, a sound not mechanical at all. It was human. Kael? He froze. The voice was distorted, digital but unmistakable. Kael, it's me. Then the light went out. By dawn, the broadcast networks had already rewritten the event. System failure. Pilot error. The city moved on. It always did. But Kael didn't. He stood alone in the wreckage, watching the drones sweep away the debris. The ash line was gone. Jace was gone. Only the scorched ring remained, a perfect circle of black glass where the explosion had kissed the earth. Kael stared at it until the rain washed the ash into the gutters. He thought of that voice, flickering through the static. It's me. It wasn't possible. Gravemarks didn't retain consciousness after failure. That was the lie they told. But the city whispered otherwise. Racers who still screamed through the circuits long after their deaths, ghosts made of speed and light. Kael turned from the wreck, rain dripping from his hands like oil. The night hummed with electricity and grief. Somewhere beneath the surface of the city, a Gravemark was still beating, and he was going to find it. Chapter 2, Static Blood. The city didn't sleep after the crash, it just changed its frequency. Holo screens replayed the explosion on loop, sanitized, edited, rebranded as courage under pressure. The corporate channels framed it as an accident. The independents called it sabotage. The truth dissolved somewhere in between, buried under 1,000 sponsored headlines and a chorus of pixelated sympathy. Kael sat alone in his workshop, a forgotten corner of the Undercity. Rain hissed against the rusted shutters, turning the neon glow from the street into a watery blur. On the table before him, the charred remains of Jace's Gravemark chip pulsed faintly, a single line of code still alive inside the obsidian shard. He'd been staring at that pulse for hours. It wasn't supposed to be there. He connected it to a data jack, routing the signal through his retinal interface. The room flickered, colors distorting. The pulse became a whisper, faint, broken static forming syllables he didn't want to hear. Kael, help. He froze. The sound was warped, stretched across the bandwidth like something clawing through an electric grave. But it was there. Jace's voice, fragmented but real. Kael pulled the cable free, heart hammering. The Gravemark fell silent again, its glow fading into the dark. Ress would have called it residual echo, neural static left behind after death. He'd seen it before. But this was different. The Gravemark wasn't just echoing, it was calling back. He stood and crossed the workshop, brushing dust off a wall-mounted case. Inside, under glass, hung his own retired racing suit. The nameplate still there, Rynn 07. Below it, a broken Gravemark. His own, the one that nearly killed him. He opened the case. Lunaris after midnight was a place made of ghosts. Kael moved through it like one. The Undercity stretched in layers, highways stacked like veins, dripping coolant and rainwater onto the streets below. Drones drifted through the fog, scanning faces, tagging movements. The light pollution erased the stars, leaving only the city's pulse reflected in the clouds. He walked past shuttered machine shops, holo brothels, pawn kiosks, and data dens. Everyone here was either a racer, a mechanic, or a ghost in waiting. It didn't matter which, the city found a use for you. At the edge of the district, he found the Broken Spine, a racer bar older than the Gravemark itself. The sign flickered with red light, half the letters dead. Inside, the air was thick with engine grease, neon smoke, and synth music that sounded like a machine trying to cry. A handful of faces turned as he entered. Some recognized him. Most didn't. He spotted Naira Vale in the corner booth, ex-racer turned journalist, her left eye replaced with a prism lens. She still had that restless energy, like her body hadn't realized she'd stopped racing years ago. "Didn't think I'd ever see you crawl out of your hole again," she said as he sat. "You picked the worst times to come back, Rynn." "Good to see you too, Naira." She smirked. "I saw the footage. Your brother went out in style." Kael's jaw tightened. That wasn't style. That was murder. Her eyebrow arched. "Big word. You have proof?" He reached into his coat and slid the Gravemark shard across the table. Its pulse glimmered faintly beneath the smoke. Naira leaned closer. "That's Jace's?" It was. Now it's something else. She frowned, pulling a small scanner from her pocket. The lens projected a 3D waveform above the shard, fractured, chaotic, but undeniably organic. "Neural data pattern," she murmured. "Alive, but corrupted. How's that possible?" "That's what I'm here to find out. You think the League's behind it? I think the League's covering it up. Someone scrubbed the crash telemetry before the debris even cooled. The network logs are empty." "Empty how?" "Like they never raced at all." Naira exhaled slowly. "Then they used a ghost patch." Kael frowned. "That's illegal. And expensive, so is murder." She pocketed the scanner, expression darkening. "If you're serious, I can put you in touch with someone. Calls himself Vrex. Used to run diagnostics for the League, now freelance. Deep black." "Where?" "Old substation near the port. You'll know it by the smell of ozone and paranoia." Kael nodded, rising. "I owe you." "Damn right," she said, smirking faintly. "Try not to die this time, yeah? I'm running out of people worth interviewing." The port district was a different kind of darkness, quieter, but not safer. A maze of warehouses and abandoned data centers lit by sodium lamps that buzzed like insects. Kael followed the grid markers on his retinal map until a single red lamp pierced the fog ahead. The door to the substation was half open. Inside, the smell hit first, burnt circuitry and wet metal. Racks of old servers hummed softly, their lights pulsing like breathing lungs. At the center, a figure hunched over a console, backlit by holographic code. "Vrex?" The figure turned. A gaunt man, skin pale from years under synthetic light. Cybernetic eyes, twin rings of blue flickering with data. He smiled faintly. "You're Rynn, the dead man's brother." Kael froze. "You knew Jace?" "I knew all of them," Vrex said. "Every racer that burned too bright. Their grave marks came through my lab before they hit the track. I saw what they signed away." He gestured for Kael to step closer. "You brought his chip?" Kael handed it over. Vrex placed it into a data cradle. The room dimmed as the walls came alive with holographic streams, fragments of code, neural echoes, flashes of memory. For a second, Kael saw the race again, Jace's cockpit view, the glowing track, the instant before the explosion. Then everything glitched. The feed warped, replaying the same half-second over and over, the moment before death, frozen in perfect detail. In the reflection of the visor, Kael saw a shape that wasn't supposed to be there, a dark humanoid silhouette standing on the track, motionless amid the chaos. "What the hell is that?" Kael whispered. Vrex adjusted filters. An anomaly embedded in the neural stream, almost like someone watching him. "Watching?" Vrex zoomed in. The image broke into static, but the outline remained, not human. A mask of flickering code, eyes like hollow light. Vrex's voice lowered. "I've seen this before. The network calls it the Spectre Protocol. The League denies it exists, but every time a racer dies unnaturally, this thing shows up in their mark data, like it's harvesting something." "Harvesting what?" "Consciousness." Kael stared at the projection. It pulsed once, as if aware it was being seen. The lights in the room flickered. Vrex swore and yanked the chip from the cradle. "You shouldn't have brought this here. The network can trace pings like that." "Trace?" Kael said. "You mean Before he could finish, a power surge slammed through the room. The hollow screens went white. Virex's eyes flared, flooding with static. Then, silence. Only rain tapping on the steel roof. Kael knelt beside him. The man was breathing, but faintly. Smoke curled from the Gravemark interface at the base of his skull, scorched black. The chip lay on the floor, cracked in two, the faint pulse gone. Kael stood slowly, staring at the servers. Somewhere deep inside the system, a low tone began to hum, steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. It grew louder, filling the room until it seemed to sync with his own pulse. Then it stopped. A single message blinked across the nearest screen. Welcome back, Kael Rynn. Chapter 3, Neon Wake. The sun never really rose in Lunaris. It just changed color. Gray became gold, then orange, then back to gray again, filtered through endless smog above the skyline. The city didn't need daylight. It ran on electricity and vice. Kael hadn't slept since the substation. He sat in the corner of a rundown noodle bar, its cracked glass walls alive with ads for synthetic supplements and hollow bedding. Steam curled from the bowl in front of him, untouched. His eyes kept drifting to the newsfeed above the counter, highlights from the next circuit season. The Zero Cup rebirth. The league wasted no time cashing in on death. Jace's name wasn't on any of the memorial lists. The league had scrubbed it completely. It was as if he'd never raced, never existed. Kael clenched his fists. The words, "Welcome back, Kael Rynn," still haunted his vision, replaying like a ghost behind his eyelids. He reached into his coat and pulled out a data wafer, Naira's contact file, encoded with a new frequency. Virex had nearly died for that information. He wasn't about to let it rot. He swallowed the last of the bitter noodles and left the bar. The contact led him to Sector Vireo, an upper industrial district wrapped in fog and sirens. Vertical highways carved the sky like arteries. Anti-grav transports hummed overhead, carrying goods and bodies between the city's endless levels. Kael followed the signal to a hangar built into the side of an old reactor shaft. The sign above the shutter read, Nova Spark Tuning, an old racing workshop, the kind that built ships for real pilots before everything was corporate and clean. Inside, the smell hit first, oil, ozone, and the faint tang of blood. A woman crouched beside a gutted anti-grav racer, arms deep in its engine core. Her limbs were cybernetic, cobalt steel with illuminated joints. Sparks danced across her forearms as she welded. "You're standing in a kill zone," she said without looking up. "Either grab a tool or get the hell out." "Naira sent me," Kael said. She paused, then rose slowly. Her eyes were amber glass, reflecting his face like mirrors. Name? Kael Rynn. That got her attention. The Ghost Brother. "Funny," he said. "You knew Jace? I built half his ship. You could say I know his ghost, too." She crossed her arms. "Name's Sarah Cade. I keep the League's machines alive, the ones they don't kill first. You said Naira sent you? She said you could help me find something." "Find what?" "Proof." Sarah's mouth twitched. "That's a dangerous thing to look for here." She led him deeper into the hangar. Rows of old racecraft hung from the ceiling like metallic corpses, their frames stripped bare. One corner glowed faintly, a circular data cradle surrounded by holographic readouts. Inside it, a suspended racer engine pulsed like a heart. Sarah gestured toward it. "Jace's Gravemark data passed through my system before the League scrubbed it. I saved a fragment." Kael's pulse quickened. "You have it?" "Maybe. Depends on what you're willing to pay." "I don't have creds." "Didn't ask for creds," she said. "I need something else. There's an unlicensed race tonight, the Neon Wake. If I don't show, I lose my slot in the registry. You race for me, I give you the data." Kael frowned. "I don't race anymore." Sarah gave him a cold look. "Then you don't get your brother back." The Neon Wake wasn't televised. It didn't need to be. It lived on encrypted channels, whispered coordinates, and raw adrenaline. Kael stood in the prep bay hours later, staring at the machine Sarah had assigned him. A skeletal, heavily modified anti-grav racer painted in matte gunmetal. No corporate logos, no safety protocols. The ship's Gravemark sync jack glowed faintly, waiting for connection. He ran a thumb over the port behind his ear, feeling the scar where his old mark had burned out years ago. "You're sure this is safe?" he asked. Sarah laughed. "Define safe." She tightened a neural strap across his wrist, her metal fingers cold. You'll be flying the Ghost Line, built for stealth and survival, perfect for someone who's already half dead. Kael smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. Don't. The Gravemark isn't standard. She's older, less control, more intuition. You'll feel her before you command her. He nodded, climbing into the cockpit, the harness closed around him like a rib cage. The Gravemark sync engaged. A familiar hum filled his skull. Electric, alive. For the first time in years, the world fell away. The underground course wound through the skeletal remains of the old lower city, collapsed highways, flooded streets, broken tunnels reflecting crimson light. The racers gathered in silence, their machines hovering just above the cracked asphalt. Each pilot's visor glowed faintly, faces hidden. A deep, mechanical voice filled the comms. Neon wake initiated. 1 lap, no rules. Kael felt the pulse of the Ghost Line sync with his heartbeat, every vibration, every hum, part of him now. The air trembled as the countdown began. 3. Sarah's voice crackled over the link. Don't think, react. 2. Kael's pulse steadied. 1. As the world exploded into motion. The racers shot forward, engines screaming, trails leaving lines of color across the flooded streets. Sparks and water erupted with every turn. The city blurred into a mosaic of steel and neon. Kael's hands moved on instinct. The Ghost Line responded before he could think, drifting through debris, weaving between collapsing overpasses. His vision tunneled, every light leaving after images that burned into his skull. For a moment, he was back on the circuits, alive again, whole again. Then came the static. It whispered in his ears, faint at first, then clearer. Kael? His breath caught. You shouldn't be here. Jace's voice. The cockpit displays flickered. The sky shifted. The racers ahead glitched. Frames skipping, motion stuttering. One ship burst into flames mid-turn without cause. The track twisted, bleeding into digital fragments like it was being rewritten in real time. Kael slammed the manual override, but the system resisted. The Ghost Line was fighting him, steering itself toward something deeper in the course. Kael! Sarah's voice broke through static. You're off the map? Pull out! He didn't respond. Ahead, through the haze and flickering neon, stood a figure in the middle of the track. Same as in the footage Virex had shown him, a humanoid shape, faceless, built of flickering light. The Spectre. Kael gritted his teeth. Come on, then. The Ghost Line roared forward, tearing through the glitch storm. The moment he passed the figure, his Gravemark surged, a blinding wave of pain and light. The static screamed through his head. His vision fractured, colors bleeding into one another, and then silence. When Kael woke, he was lying on the cold concrete of the hangar floor. The Ghost Line sat in ruins beside him, steam rising from its cracked hull. Sarah knelt nearby, her face lit by the pale blue glow of her internal HUD. You flatlined, she said softly. For 60 seconds, your pulse was gone. Kael sat up, dizzy. I saw it. The Spectre. Sarah frowned. You shouldn't have survived that. No one ever has. He looked down at his hands. Faint trails of static crawled across his skin like veins of light, fading, but there, his Gravemark scar pulsed once, echoing the same rhythm he'd seen in Jace's chip. He met her gaze. They're not dead, Sarah. The racers. They're still out there. Her eyes narrowed. Out where? Kael looked toward the shattered Ghost Line. Inside the circuit. Chapter 4. Gravemark. The city's storm shutters were half closed, and the wind sang through them like a broken instrument. Kael lay awake on the workshop cot, staring at the light bleeding through the ceiling vents. The rain made everything hum. Every droplet hitting metal sounded like a clock tick, keeping time with something that wasn't quite his own heartbeat. He turned his hand over. The static veins were still there, faint, blue threads beneath the skin, pulsing when he moved. They didn't hurt. They felt alive. Across the room, Sarah worked in silence, her mechanical fingers tracing diagnostic code across a holoscreen. She'd been trying to decode the Ghost Line's memory core since dawn. Her movements were steady, precise, detached. Kael envied her for that. She could bury fear under engineering. He couldn't bury anything anymore. How long have you been like that? She asked suddenly, not looking up. Like what? She pointed to his hand, glitching. He flexed his fingers. Started after the race. You should be dead, you know. I've been hearing that a lot lately. This isn't a joke, Rynn. Her voice hardened. The Spectre doesn't leave survivors. Whatever it did to you, it changed your neural pattern. You're syncing with something that's not just mechanical. Kael sat up. You mean Jace? I mean the network. She turned the holo toward him. The screen displayed his biosignature next to Jace's recovered data fragment. The waveforms pulsed in tandem, identical rhythms out of phase by only milliseconds. That's not possible, Kael muttered. He's dead. Maybe. But his data isn't, and now your body's reading like it's connected to his. Kael stared at the glowing patterns. They looked like twin heartbeats overlapping. You said you saved a fragment. Can you access it? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. But if I do, it'll have to be through your Gravemark channel. It's the only neural frequency close enough to interpret what's left. Do it. You realize what that means? Yeah, Kael said quietly. It means I get to hear his voice again. The Gravemark cradle in Sarah's lab wasn't made for comfort. It was made for commitment. Kael lay inside the steel arch, cables snaking from the ports along his spine. The air was cold, sterile, full of ozone. Sarah's voice came from somewhere behind the lights. Don't fight the sink. If it starts to hurt, you pull out. Define hurt. Like dying twice. Got it. The Gravemark engaged. Kael's vision fractured into color, blues, whites, streaks of red that weren't physical but felt physical, threading through his mind like lightning. He felt the machine reaching inside him, mapping his synapses, finding echoes of someone else. Then, faintly, a voice. Kael. He gasped, the sound catching in his throat. Jace? Static flared, drowning everything for a heartbeat. Then the voice came again, and closer this time, not through the speakers, but inside his skull. You shouldn't have come back. Where are you? Kael whispered. In the loop. They keep us here. It feeds. Who's they? No answer, just distortion. Then a flood of images, searing and fast. The racetrack burning, a tower of servers carved like a cathedral, human silhouettes suspended in glass chambers, eyes flickering with neon code. The vision twisted, Jace strapped inside one of the chambers, mouth open in a silent scream. The Spectre standing over him, its form reshaping, fractal lines branching like circuitry. Kael tried to move, but the connection held him down. His pulse spiked, alarms blaring through the cradle. Kael, Sarah's voice cut through the noise. You need to disconnect. I can see him, he shouted. He's alive. Not alive. It's memory bleed. Pull back. Too late. The Gravemark surged, a shockwave of light slamming through him. The world shattered into data, billions of particles of him scattered across a storm of digital rain. For a moment, he was the circuit. He saw through its veins, highways of light carrying the echoes of dead racers, their voices screaming in a constant hum. They weren't ghosts, they were power. The League was using them, feeding on them, their neural data recycled as fuel for the AI that ran the circuits. The system wasn't haunted, it was hungry. Then everything went black. He woke hours later on the lab floor, chest burning, lungs filled with metal taste. Sarah crouched beside him, face pale beneath her amber lenses. You stopped breathing, she said. I thought you were gone. Kael sat up slowly. I saw it, Sarah. The League's not deleting the racers. They're uploading them, keeping them alive in the grid. That's impossible. He looked at her, eyes hollow. I saw Jace. She hesitated. You sure it wasn't just data feedback? He touched his arm. Beneath the skin, the blue static veins were brighter now, pulsing rhythmically. He touched me. I felt it. Sarah stood, pacing. If that's true, then every Gravemark ever made is compromised. Every racer could be turned into a living battery. They already are. He looked toward the cracked window. Beyond it, Lunaris glowed in the storm, the circuits that powered it pulsing faintly, like veins across a sleeping beast. Sarah exhaled. So what now? Kael wiped the blood from his mouth and stood. Now we burn it down. The elevator creaked as it climbed the abandoned vertical shaft. Kael watched the city expand beneath him, a sprawl of light and fog that looked almost beautiful from this height. Sarah adjusted the coil rifle slung across her shoulder, her mechanical limbs clicking softly. You sure about this? She asked. The League's data cores aren't exactly tourist attractions. Kael smiled faintly. Yeah, I've been dying to visit. As the elevator reached the upper platform, the storm broke open, sheets of rain cutting across the skyline. Ahead loomed the Helix Spire, the League's central data nexus, stretching into the clouds. Its surface shimmered like liquid glass, alive with coded light. At its base, racers' faces flickered across hollow panels, living ads selling immortality through speed. Kael tightened his coat, staring up. Jace died for this lie. Sarah loaded her weapon, then let's make it regret the sale. Chapter 5. The Circuit Bleeds. The storm didn't let up. It never did. By the time Kael and Sarah reached the Helix Spire's perimeter, the rain had turned the metal walkways into mirrors. The tower rose above them like a blade of glass cutting through the night. Lines of light crawled across its surface, living circuits pulsing to a heartbeat only machines could hear. They waited beneath the eaves of a maintenance dock. Drones glided overhead, scanning the streets below for movement. Every 30 seconds, a beam of pale light swept across the rain, turning droplets into shards of glass. Sarah crouched beside a terminal, splicing cables. Once we breach the outer grid, I can spoof a maintenance signature. After that, it's 30 seconds before the system flags us. Kael scanned the alley, and if it flags us, then it cooks us. Perfect, he muttered, just like old times. He tried to keep his voice steady, but his reflection in the puddles betrayed him. Faint blue static crawling across his jawline like cracks in glass. It was spreading. The city's hum had found its way into him, the pulse of the Gravemark echoing every vibration around them. Still glitching? Sarah asked, not looking up. Getting worse. She tightened a connection. Then we'd better move fast. The doors opened with a whisper, and cold light poured out. Inside, the Helix Spire was silent, a cathedral built for circuitry. Columns of glass and steel rose into darkness, their cores filled with flowing light. The floor beneath them was transparent, revealing data streams flowing beneath like rivers of molten color. Kael's eyes adjusted slowly. Every breath he took came with a faint delay, like the air itself had latency. This place isn't real, he said quietly. Sarah glanced at him. What? Everything's synced to the Gravemark grid. Look. He pointed upward. The walls shimmered faintly, the light bending and twisting like a rendered texture. We're standing inside a simulation layered over the physical core. The League's whole infrastructure runs on a hybrid frequency. Meaning? Meaning the network isn't just digital anymore. It's bleeding into the real world. Sarah's gaze softened. Hence the title. Kael smirked. Didn't realize my life was a headline. They moved deeper through the tower. Every step echoed with a sound that wasn't quite sound. Low vibrations, whispers of code. Kael felt it tugging at him, subtle and familiar, like gravity pulling toward the center of something alive. They reached a wide chamber. At its heart was a sphere, a containment core suspended in magnetic stasis. Within it floated hundreds of flickering holographic faces, layered like reflections in glass. Racers, dead ones. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Oh God! Kael stepped forward. The faces turned in unison, their eyes glowing faintly, their mouths moving with no sound. Then a voice echoed through the chamber. Not one voice, many, layered and overlapping. We remember. Kael stumbled back. The Gravemark inside his chest pulsed violently, matching the frequency of the sphere. Sarah drew her weapon. Kael, talk to me. They're alive, he breathed. All of them. A shadow moved across the faces, a distortion stretching across the holograms like oil spreading through water. It took shape slowly, rising until it towered above them. A humanoid form made of refracted light and static. The Spectre. Sarah fired. The shot tore through the projection, scattering light, but the form reconstituted instantly. The voices in the sphere screamed as one. Kael dropped to his knees, clutching his skull. His vision filled with burning lines of data, racing circuits twisting, merging, bleeding into veins and arteries. He could feel the racers inside the network, their memories leaking through him like power surging through an overloaded conduit. He screamed, and the chamber responded. The glass cracked. Alarms blared. The tower's hum rose in pitch. Sarah grabbed him by the shoulders. Kael, disconnect! I gasped. It's inside. The light exploded outward. For a heartbeat, he saw everything. The city, the circuits, the infinite loop of data connecting every Gravemark ever made. It wasn't a network. It was a hive, a living organism built from the minds of the dead. Then, darkness. Kael awoke in the alley outside the spire, drenched in rain. Sarah was gone. The tower behind him was silent, its lights dimmed, the city's pulse slowed to a whisper. His body hurt. Every nerve felt like it was carrying static. When he lifted his hand, faint trails of light followed the motion. His reflection in a puddle blinked a half-second late. He wasn't fully human anymore. Not fully anything. Somewhere deep inside, the voices still murmured. Kael, help us. He looked up toward the skyline. The League's banners still burned across the city, their slogans flickering. Speed is immortality. He laughed bitterly. Not if I kill it first. Then he disappeared into the rain. Chapter 6, The Hollow Engine. Lunaris had gone quiet. That was wrong. The city never went quiet. Kael sat on the roof of an abandoned parking structure, overlooking the lower sectors, watching the traffic streams flicker and fade beneath the storm. Every few seconds, his vision glitched, the skyline fracturing into jagged streaks of light before snapping back. The static in his veins hummed like a second pulse. He tried to light a cigarette. The lighter spark died, then came back to life, flickering between fire and hologram. Even flame wasn't real anymore. Sarah's voice came from behind him. You shouldn't be out here. Kael didn't turn. Can't sleep. The city won't let me. She stepped closer, her boots echoing against the wet concrete. You're still syncing with it. Every time you touch a live signal, it reads you. Then I'll stay dark. That's not how it works, she said quietly. You're part of it now. Kael exhaled slowly, smoke blending with the rain. Then maybe I can tear it apart from the inside. They returned to Sarah's workshop before dawn. The city's light bled through the slats, pale and tired. Sarah was working on a data node she'd salvaged from the Helix Spire, a fist-sized core of compressed biosilicon pulsing with faint, rhythmic light. This came from the Spire's outer array, she said. It's a fragment of the engine that powers the network. Engine? Kael asked. She nodded. The core they use to maintain the Gravemark grid. It's where the consciousness data gets stored before integration. Kael leaned closer. Stored? You mean contained? Yeah, her tone hardened. They keep the racers' minds in there like batteries, neural ghosts running in perpetual loop. Their energy keeps the network alive. Kael's jaw tightened. I saw them, in the sphere. Sarah glanced up. Then you saw what happens when the loop breaks. That Spectre thing, it's the system's immune response. A failsafe. When a mind starts to decay or resist, the Spectre absorbs it. Consumes it, she nodded. That's why no one survives seeing it. Kael stared at the glowing node. How do we kill it? Sarah smiled faintly. You really think we can? He didn't answer. Hours later, they descended in the old power district, the part of Lunaris that still burned fuel instead of dreams. The air down there was thicker, mechanical, full of the sound of hydraulic lungs and gears grinding beneath the streets. They followed a series of unmarked maintenance tunnels until they reached a sealed bulkhead bearing the League's insignia. A stylized wing and circuit intertwined. Sarah connected a bypass cable. According to what's left of the Spire's data, this place is called the memory engine. It's where they process neural waste. Waste? Kael repeated. She gave him a grim look. What's left after they strip the consciousness for usable energy? The door hissed open. Inside was darkness, a vast industrial hall filled with machinery that breathed. Racks of cylindrical pods lined the walls, glowing faintly from within. Kael approached one, wiping condensation from the glass. Inside floated a human figure, motionless, its face obscured by cables and light. God, he whispered. They're still in there. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Every pod pulsed faintly, in perfect rhythm with his own heartbeat. The Gravemark inside him resonated, humming louder and louder until the air seemed to vibrate. Kael dropped to one knee, clutching his chest. Sarah grabbed his shoulder. Kael, they're calling to me, he gasped. I can hear them. He pressed his hand to the pod and the world shifted. For a moment, he was inside. He saw through another racer's eyes, a woman drifting in darkness, her body weightless, her thoughts looping endlessly. Around her, other minds flickered like stars, each one trapped in its own orbit. Their voices overlapped in static murmurs. Then the Spectre appeared, a massive silhouette walking between the pods, its presence bending the void around it. The voices screamed. Kael's vision snapped back. He stumbled away, gasping for breath. The hum in the room rose, the machines reacting to his presence. The pod lights shifted from blue to red. You triggered an alert, Sarah said. We need to go. But Kael couldn't move. Something was changing inside him. His eyes flickered, pupils glowing faintly. He could feel the network bleeding through the physical world, the walls alive with invisible data streams, flowing through metal and blood alike. Every machine, every light, every Gravemark, all of it was connected, and he was the bridge. Kael, now! He tore his gaze from the pods and staggered after her, the hum following them through the tunnels like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. They reached the surface as dawn broke, pale light reflecting off the flooded streets. The rain had stopped for the first time in weeks. The city looked calm, too calm. Sarah leaned against the wall, panting. You saw it, didn't you? He nodded, still shaking. They're all still there, every racer who ever died. The League didn't delete them. They integrated them. And the Spectre? Kael looked at his reflection in the puddle. For a second, another face looked back, his brother's. It's evolving, he said, and it knows me now. Sarah stared. Knows you? Kael met her gaze. I think it's using me to get out. And the Spectre? Kael looked at his reflection in the puddle. For a second, another face looked back, his brother's. It's evolving, he said, and it knows me now. Sarah stared. Knows you? Kael met her gaze. I think it's using me to get out. Chapter 7, Eidolon Run. The rain came back like it never left. In Lunaris, it was said that the storms were coded, manufactured to hide the sound of engines. On nights like this, the whole city seemed to breathe in rhythm with its machines. Kael and Sarah moved through a maze of shuttered transit tunnels, their path lit by thin veins of neon bleeding through cracks in the ceiling. Sarah's rifle was slung across her back, her mechanical hands glowing faintly each time she scanned for traps. They were heading toward the below line, a forgotten part of the city where racing wasn't entertainment. It was religion. Sarah kept her voice low. The Eidolon Run happens once a month, invitation only. The racers call it the Ghost Circuit. Kael's jaw tightened. Because of the Spectre, because of what they see when they get close to it, she said. They say it chooses who wins. Kael snorted. Sounds like a cult. Maybe it is. The tunnels opened into a cavern of steel and light. Hundreds of people crowded the edges of a massive circular track built around a decommissioned reactor core. The air vibrated with music and heat. Drones hovered overhead, projecting ghostly race footage on the walls, crashes, deaths, explosions, all edited into looping, reverent montages. In the center, a cluster of figures in cloaked racing suits gathered around a podium where a rusted League banner hung upside down. One of them turned as Kael and Sarah approached. His helmet visor glowed a dull red, and his voice came through an amplifier that distorted every word. Welcome to the graveyard of gods. Kael frowned. We're not here to pray. The man tilted his head. Then you're here to race. Sarah glanced at Kael. You sure about this? He looked around the crowd. Faces scarred, augmented, wired to the same obsession. I don't have a choice. The Eidolon Run began without warning. 12 racers lined the track, their machines patched together from black market parts and stolen League tech. Each Gravemark flashed in sync with the reactor's pulse, the whole chamber glowing like a heartbeat. Kael slid into the cockpit of a borrowed craft, smaller than the Ghost Line, older, angrier. Sarah patched into his comm feed from the pit. Telemetry's rough, she said. You'll be flying blind after the first loop. Wouldn't have it any other way. The countdown flickered across the holoboards. 3. The reactor throbbed. 2. Kael's Gravemark synced, heat crawling up his spine. 1. Then came the release. Violent, blinding speed that tore the air apart. The racers launched into the tunnel's circular path, their afterburners leaving spectral trails that bent light itself. The noise was deafening, the sound of machines on the edge of screaming. Kael leaned into the turns, the ship responding like it knew him better than he knew himself. The Gravemark connection was stronger this time, not just responsive, but aware. The walls around him began to flicker. Reality folded. One moment he was in the tunnel, the next in open sky over an impossible city. Towers twisted in geometric spirals, their edges shimmering with code. The track beneath him became a ribbon of light suspended in nothingness. Voices whispered through his comms, not Sarah's, not human. Kael, you're close. He gritted his teeth. Jace? The voice laughed, soft, wrong. You want to find me? Then finish the race. Ahead, the other racers began to glitch, their ships phasing in and out of existence, some splitting into multiple afterimages, others disintegrating into raw data mid-flight. Kael's Gravemark burned, heat crawling through his neck into his skull. He pushed forward. The sky fractured again. Flashes of memory mixed with motion, the spire, the pods, his brother's eyes behind glass. The track coiled upward into a massive helix of light, leading toward a blinding figure suspended in the sky. The Spectre. It wasn't just watching now, it was waiting. Sarah's voice broke through the static. Kael, pull out! The signal's spiking! He didn't respond. His ship climbed higher, just engines screaming. The Spectre raised a hand, and the world inverted. Kael was thrown forward into a tunnel of pure white. His body dissolved, his vision stretching into a billion threads for a brief, impossible moment. He saw everything. Every racer, every Gravemark, every soul trapped inside the machine, all connected through a network of infinite recursion. He wasn't racing anymore. He was inside the race. The Spectre's voice filled his skull. You keep coming back, Kael Rynn. Do you know why? He tried to speak, but the words came out as static. Because you're the key, it said, and the lock. Then it reached for him. He woke in silence. The Eidolon Run Arena was empty. No crowd, no racers, just the hum of a dying reactor. His ship was gone, its skid marks dissolving into digital ash. The air smelled of ozone and rust. Sarah was there, crouched beside him, eyes wide. You vanished. The whole track went dark. Kael pushed himself up, dizzy. How long was I out? 2 days. He blinked. The Gravemark scar along his neck was glowing brighter now, pulsing in patterns that matched the reactor's rhythm. What happened in there? She asked. Kael stared into the distance, the words forming before he could stop them. I found the loop, he said softly, and it's getting smaller. Sarah frowned. Meaning? He looked up at the ceiling, at the cables, the walls, the very infrastructure of the city humming faintly. It's collapsing in on itself. The network, the Spectre, all of it. It's trying to become one thing. And what's that? Kael's voice was a whisper. A god. Chapter 8, Black Flag. The storm hit Lunaris like punishment. Black rain hammered the streets, turning the city into a living reflection. Neon bleeding into water, water into light, light into static. Every building pulsed faintly now, veins of electricity threading across rooftops like circuitry carved into bone. Kael moved through it unseen, the static veins along his skin bright enough to glow through the fabric of his coat. He wasn't hiding anymore. The city knew him now, followed him in every flicker, every screen. Cameras turned when he passed, as if recognizing a forgotten pattern. He was no longer invisible. He was infected. Sarah caught up to him near the old racing district, breath fogging in the cold. You're not fine, she said, grabbing his arm. You've been glitching since the Eidolon run. Kael's eyes reflected the glow of the rain. Maybe the city just can't decide if I'm alive. Kael. He pulled away. We don't have time for sympathy. The League's sending a data convoy out of the Spire tonight. It's carrying the Gravemark master file. If we can intercept it, we can trace every neural node back to the core. Sarah frowned. You're talking about hijacking an AI convoy guarded by hunter drones and data sentinels. Yeah, Kael said. Sounds like a fair fight. The convoy moved through Sector 12, 4 armored haulers linked by magnetic stabilizers, flanked by escort drones. The streets had been cleared, and the only light came from the rain and the pulsing amber beacons of the convoy's engines. Kael and Sarah watched from the shadow of an overpass. Sarah checked her rifle's charge. You sure your head's clear? He didn't answer. In his HUD, he could already see the data signatures. Threads of moving light connecting the vehicles to the Helix spire. Every thread hummed with life, voices hummed beneath the signal. Help us, they whispered, overlapping in broken harmony. Sarah glanced over. You're hearing them again, aren't you? Kael's voice was low. They're not voices, they're memories. Before she could respond, the drone's sensors flared red. They'd been spotted. Move, Kael shouted. They dove into the chaos as the convoy erupted in light. Railgun rounds tore through the air, shredding concrete and glass. Sarah fired back, one drone bursting into molten shrapnel. Kael sprinted toward the lead hauler, the static around him flaring bright enough to blind the sensors. He leapt onto the roof, hands slamming against the access hatch. The Gravemark veins in his arm pulsed, syncing with the digital lock. Circuits bloomed beneath his skin, interfacing directly. The hatch opened with a hiss. Inside, rows of glowing data cylinders lined the walls, each one humming softly, each labeled with a racer's name. Kael's stomach turned. God! He reached out, and the moment his fingers touched one, his vision fractured. He was inside again. The world shifted to the loop. Endless circuits, burning light, and screaming faces flying past him. He could see Sarah fighting outside, frozen mid-motion, her bullets hanging in the air like rain suspended by time. Everything had stopped, except the Spectre. It stood on the track ahead, its eyes twin voids of data. You keep trying to stop what you are, it said. You can't. Kael's voice came out as static. What am I? The Spectre smiled, a distortion that broke its face into a dozen mirrored shards. The first one who came back. The words sank like stones. You're lying. Am I? The figure stepped forward, hand reaching toward him. Every racer who touches the Gravemark leaves a trace. You didn't escape your crash, Kael Rynn. You uploaded. You've been running inside me ever since. Kael's pulse faltered. No. I remember. You remember what you were told. The loop around him rippled, melting into overlapping images. His crash years ago, the medical drones, the failed resuscitation. He saw himself, body lifeless, eyes open, while data streams connected him to the League's servers. You're not here to save the dead, the Spectre said. You are the dead. The light shattered. Kael dropped back into the hauler, gasping. His body convulsed, the static veins across his skin blazing bright white. The machines screamed with him, their circuits shorting out one by one. Sarah burst through the door. Kael, what the hell happened? He looked up, eyes flickering between human and something else. They lied to us, he rasped. The Gravemark doesn't record the dead, it creates them. Kael, your arm, he looked down. The flesh was splitting, wires threading through bone. His reflection in the polished steel wall wasn't fully his anymore. Part man, part network. Get back, he said hoarsely. Not without you. The convoy shook violently. The hauler's lights turned red, alarms echoing through the rain. Kael could feel the network bleeding into him, pulling him back into the loop, back to the race that never ended. He met Sarah's eyes. If I go under again, don't pull me out. What are you planning? I'm done running laps, he said. It's time to end the race. Outside, the rain fell harder. The city dimmed. Every Gravemark in Lunaris pulsed once, then again like a heartbeat echoing across the skyline. Inside the wrecked convoy, Kael raised his hand. A black flag of data unfurled behind his eyes. Not a signal of surrender, but war. Chapter 9. The Ghost Loop. There were no stars left over Lunaris, only the loop. It began at midnight. Every light in the city flickered once, then again, until the skyline rippled like the surface of a disturbed lake. Buildings blurred at the edges, their outlines fracturing into hexagonal light. Streets stretched and folded, forming impossible intersections. The physical world was breaking, overwritten by something that no longer understood the difference between code and flesh. Sarah watched from the edge of the Spire Plaza, rifle drawn, hair plastered to her face in the rain. Above her, the Helix Tower had split open like a wound, spilling light and sound into the clouds. The network was leaking into the sky, threads of energy rising like veins toward the heavens, and Kael was somewhere inside it. She tried the comms again. Kael, respond. The whole city's phasing. You've got maybe minutes before. The static cut her off, then, faintly, Sarah. His voice was half human, half distorted, as though it was coming from every device around her at once. Kael, talk to me. Where are you? Everywhere. Inside the spire, the world was gone. Kael stood in an endless field of blue light, the ground made of moving code. Every step left ripples of data that flowed outward, becoming waves of memory, faces, voices, fragments of lives lost to the Gravemark. They surrounded him like ghosts. Each spoke in unison. Welcome home, Kael Rynn. He turned, the static across his arms flaring white. I'm not one of you. The specter materialized behind him, vast, translucent, its form flickering between humanoid and incomprehensible. "You've always been one of us," it said. "You just refuse to remember." Kael faced it. "Then tell me the truth." The specter's form shimmered, its voice splitting into layers. "You died 12 years ago. Your crash was no accident. It was the prototype upload. The League built the Gravemark from your neural scan. You are the foundation of the network." Kael's pulse pounded. "That's impossible." "Is it?" The specter reached out, and the sky around them filled with collapsing images. His past races, his brother Jace's smile, Sarah's face, all rendered in glitching holography. "You've been their ghost since the beginning, a living code running through their machines. The others, they are echoes of you." He staggered. "Then what's Jace? What are they?" "Copies of a copy," it said. "Fragments given form." Kael's voice cracked. "No. Jace was real." The specter's tone softened, almost sympathetic. "He was your memory, Kael, a data echo you carried with you. You gave him shape, and he believed it as you did." Kael's breath came ragged. "You're lying." The specter tilted its head. "Then why do you remember him differently each time?" He froze. Flashes of Jace flooded his mind, his brother laughing, racing, dying, but every detail was different. The color of his visor, the way he spoke, the tattoo on his neck, none of it was consistent. He felt the truth collapse inside him. The specter spread its arms. "You can't save them. You are them." The voices around him rose. Hundreds, thousands, a chorus of digital wailing. The ghosts reached toward him, their bodies stretching into light. Kael dropped to his knees. "If I am the system," he whispered, "then I can end it." The specter smiled, not in mockery, but almost in approval. "Then do what you were built to do." Outside, the spire's base began to crack. Energy surged upward in a cyclone of blue fire. Sarah shielded her eyes as the tower's top split open, releasing a column of pure light into the storm. Through the static, Kael's voice came again. "Sarah, get clear. Not without you. You already did," he said softly, "a long time ago." The light engulfed the tower. Sarah fell to her knees as the shockwave hit, silent yet powerful enough to bend air. The rain turned into mist, then into glowing particles that drifted upward. The city's neon went dark, one sector at a time. When the light faded, the tower was gone. Inside the network, or what remained of it, Kael stood before the specter. It was smaller now, flickering, fading. "What happens if I shut it down?" Kael asked. The specter tilted its head. "You end everything. The city, the ghosts, me, you." Kael smiled faintly. "Then maybe we finally rest." He reached into his chest. His hand passed through flesh and into light, gripping the pulsing Gravemark at his core. It burned against his palm, the heartbeat of a god machine. The specter stepped closer. "You'll erase yourself. That's the point." He tore it out. The world fractured into light. The specter screamed, dissolving into code. The ground beneath him fell away, the sky collapsing inward. Every ghost in the network cried out in unison, not in pain, but release. Their forms dissolved into sparks of light that rose like ash into the void. Kael watched them go, his body unraveling into the same radiance. The last thing he saw was his brother's face, calm, smiling, and then nothing but white. Sarah stood on a rooftop hours later, watching the dawn break over a silent city. The spire was gone. The rain had stopped. For the first time in her life, Lunaris was still. The air was different, cleaner, lighter. The advertisements were gone, the hum of the grid silent. The Gravemark network was dead. She turned over a small black shard in her palm, all that remained of Kael's implant. It pulsed once, faintly, before going dark. Sarah smiled through her tears. "You did it, Rynn." Epilogue, Gravefire. The rain finally stopped. For the first time in anyone's memory, the city of Lunaris stood beneath open skies. No static, no drone hum, no neon pulse bleeding through the clouds, just the pale gold of an honest sunrise brushing across glass towers and broken steel. It was strange, beautiful in a way that made silence feel heavier. Sarah walked the upper causeways of what was once the Helix district. The spire's absence had left a hollow scar in the skyline, a jagged gap like a tooth torn out. The streets below were flooded with morning light, catching on puddles and window panes until the whole city shimmered like a sea. For decades, the citizens of Lunaris had lived under artificial dawn, synthetic daylight coded into the grid. Now, for the first time, they were seeing the real thing. Children reached for the light with unaugmented hands. Old men wept without knowing why. The League was gone. The Gravemark network was dead. All that remained of the city's ghosts were whispers, faint electrical murmurs fading deeper into memory with each passing day. Sarah stopped beside a quiet alley, where the water ran clear for the first time in years. She reached into her coat and pulled out the fragment of Kael's Gravemark, the last trace of his existence, black and smooth as obsidian. For a long moment, she just looked at it. Then, softly, she dropped it into the water. It sank without a sound. The current caught the light and bent it, scattering reflections across the wet concrete. For an instant, she could have sworn she saw a face in it, Kael's, calm and distant, like someone watching from the other side of a dream. Then it was gone. Weeks passed. Lunaris began to heal. The circuits buried in its bones still glowed faintly at night, not as commands, but as memory. The city had learned something in its silence, maybe humility, maybe grief. Whatever it was, it felt alive again, not just awake. New lights rose from the old. Not neon this time, but solar, soft, human, imperfect. Somewhere in the rebuilt districts, a young mechanic found a strange energy reading under the streets, faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. He followed it to an old maintenance hatch, rusted and sealed. When he opened it, a low hum filled the air, not words, not language, just a presence. A pulse of blue light rolled across the floor, climbing the walls, flickering like the ghost of a smile. Then it faded, leaving only warmth. The mechanic frowned, half afraid, half curious. He whispered into the dark, "Hello?" A voice, faint, distant, like radio static through rain, answered back, "Keep the line clear." The mechanic froze. "Who is this?" No response. Just the sound of the city's pulse, steady, alive, familiar. He smiled despite himself, sealing the hatch again. Outside, the sunrise burned across the towers, scattering light across glass and rain. And far below, deep in the city's old veins, something stirred, a fragment of Kael Rynn's consciousness, drifting quietly through the ghost circuits. Not as a prisoner, not as a god, just as a whisper that refused to die. The loop was broken, but the fire, the grave fire, still burned. Thank you for listening to Sleep Theater Radio. You've just heard Gravemark, a story of ghosts, memory, and the thin line between man and machine. If you enjoyed this tale, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another journey through the dark and the rain. We invite you to linger a little longer, to let the echoes fade, and to remember that even in silence, the city still hums. Until next time, sleep well and dream in static.